Our pasture pigs have made a royal mess of this field here behind me, and you're seeing the worst of it. I'm Rob from Dowdle Family Farms, and I just moved our pigs into another paddock to graze. And in this video, I want to give you this big picture of how I managed the pigs in this paddock, how much money I saved while grazing this paddock with that management system, and how I plan to help heal this field in the days ahead. If you don't know, I'm on a mission to regenerate the soils on our farm using cover crops and livestock, while also reducing the amount of imported grain that we feed our pastured pigs. Therefore, I'm growing cover crops that help build soil health while also replace a significant portion of our pigs' grain diet. Let me preface what I'm going to say in this video though. I know that the pasture is destroyed, especially this part that you see here, and it's the worst of it. I'm aware of the possibility of compaction, and I know that it is muddy, and I know that it's a problem. I'm not saying that my management is ideal or even great. Rather, I'm demonstrating in this video what it looks like now, how I plan to fix it. It's also important to know that there are very few people who are growing a significant portion of their pigs' feed on diverse agricultural fields. Most of the pigs' nutrition from pastured pig comes from grain imported from monoculture agriculture. Further, much of what I'm doing is testing, trialing, and documenting what was successful and what is not. Also, the pigs have always had a way to get out of this mud, so don't tell me that they need a dry place. Finally, this is not a perennial pasture. It's a worn-out pasture that was unproductive, and last year I started by growing annual cover crops to graze with our livestock. So the rooting up in this field is not a problem like it would be if I'd grazed them on our perennial pastures like fescues and clovers. Last year I planted this cover crop of peas, clover, ryegrass, cereal rye, brassicas, chicory, and others. It wasn't planted uniformly and it did not germinate uniformly. On the other end of the field there were a lot of clovers and chicory, while this northern end of the field where I started grazing the pigs was more ryegrass and peas. I set water off to the side over here on the gravel driveway that I'd have easy access to, and then I set the feed bucket right over here to my left. The pigs enjoyed grazing the field, and they really loved the peas. They slowly started hunting the brassicas and the clovers after the first couple of days when they discovered that there were a few of them intermixed in this peas and ryegrass. It varied from day to day, but I gave them fresh strips of forage every day to 3 days, depending on the weather. I slowly started moving them every day. If I'd grazed the pigs on the whole paddock at one time, they would have trampled the vast majority of the feed. And while it's good for soil life, the pigs miss a lot of the nutrition. Remember, I'm trying to grow as much of our pigs' nutrition on our farm as possible to reduce our reliance on monoculture agriculture. Plus, when they eat the forage, it comes back in the form of manure anyway. For the first few days, the field wasn't in this kind of shape, but then it rained a lot after the first week, so this northern part of the field was in worse shape because they were feeding here and there was a lot of mud. I could have moved the feeder, but it would have created more mud holes wherever I moved the feeder. Also, because the field slopes a little bit, especially as we get to the gravel road, it's worse over there. Plus, they started rooting up crawfish holes to eat the crawfish and made even more of a mess on this side of the field over here. In many ways, I consider this part of the field to be much like a sacrificial spot that'll grow back readily. Much like we do with cows, oftentimes feeding them in sacrificial lots. But because we plant annual cover crops on this field anyway, it's not as big of a deal as if we had a sacrificial paddock on a perennial pasture. Now, I continued offering strips of fresh forage every few days. Ideally, I would have moved the whole group of pigs and kept them off of this paddock. But doing so would have made even more of a mess in the spots where I fed and watered the pigs. They would have had more spots just like this throughout the whole field. So I did not. Again, I realize it's not ideal, but we'll see how it goes. Maybe I should have moved them more frequently. We'll just have to see how this field performs when we grow our warm season cover crops. Now, how much money did we save? The pigs that were in here were eating 153 pounds of grain per day when I was feeding them in the wooded lot next to it. While managing them on this cover crop field, I reduced their feed consumption to 95 pounds of grain per day without sacrificing any sort of animal performance. That's a reduction of 38%. 58 pounds a day, that's almost $13 a day for 21 days, nearly $250 for the 3 weeks that they were on this field. Of course, that's assuming that their grain consumption would not have increased during that amount of time. Now, there were roughly $70 or so in cost in planting this field. I did irrigate it out of a pond, but with the purchase of our no-till drill and planting more nutritious cover crops for the pigs, I think I can reduce the cost pretty significantly next year while also planting more nutritious crops. If I knew then what I know now, I would have planted more nutritious forages for our pigs and would have saved even more money on the feed costs. But you see, the cost savings in feed alone are not the big deal. You see, the fertility of the field growing from the cover crops is huge as well. And while it's not immediately monetizable, it is still significant long-term for the productivity of the farm, not only in this summer's crop, but in future years as well. Of course, the final benefit of grazing this cover crop with pigs is that it improves the nutrient density of the pork significantly. The pigs are getting significant portions of the nutrition from more than just a handful of grain products and synthetic vitamins. Rather, the diverse forages that help form muscle and fat are filled with vitamins and minerals from dozens of sources rather than just the 2 or 3 grains that are in most commercial feed mixes. The improved quality of the meat is also significant and should not be overlooked. Now, how did I heal this soil? Now, this paddock is in rough shape, and there's no doubt about it. This time of the year in Mississippi, it's hard to find dry places on our farm. Later in the spring and into the summer, the pigs would root around, but it would not be as detrimental to the soil as it was this time of the year. Frankly, I don't like the shape that this part of the field is in, but nor am I satisfied leaving the pigs in the woods and feeding them 100% grain either. I have seeded much of this field as I can with a pea oat blend from green cover seed with the no-till drill. The muddiest portion of the field, I'm going to try broadcasting the seed and seeing what happens. Even driving the tractor over the field to seed it with a no-till drill created some ruts. Now, technically, it's too weak to plant with a no-till drill, but so far I've had success with fields like this germinating. Of course, whether I should be driving over the field is an entirely different topic of conversation as well. I'm not sure what's worse, leaving the field bare or driving on it to seed these crops. Just broadcasting seed on the soil gives kind of wildly sporadic germination in my experience this time of the year. Ironically, even if this pea oat mix germinates really well, I'm not sure that I'll have the livestock to graze it. The bigger pigs will go into the processor about that time, and our smaller pigs won't be big enough to eat much of this crop. Now, if I could put them in there to eat the peas and then let the cows come through and eat what's left, and I may do that. I will have some cows over here that will be grass finishing on this part of the farm in the next few weeks, and they'll perform pretty well on the pea oat blend. They tend to trample the peas more than the pigs, and they do like them, but they trample them a lot. So pigs get more benefit out of the peas than cows do, in my experience, but the cows will benefit from the oats. Now, if I were not going to be planting anything, in 4 to 6 weeks, we could be planting our warm season cover crop mix. And once that's planted, we won't be able to tell that this field was even torn up as it is. That warm season cover crop mix has tremendous roots that will help heal the soil in more dramatic ways than we could imagine. The sorghum sudan grass, cowpeas, buckwheat, mung beans, sunflowers, brassicas, chicory, and many others have a huge positive impact on the soil and produce outstanding forage for all of our livestock. Anyway, I don't have all the answers, but I just wanted to let you know what I'm trying to do. We'll see how it works out over the next few weeks. Take care, and I hope you have a wonderful day.